Just a quick spoiler warning. This video contains very minor spoilers from Triangle Strategy. I don't use any character names, and I am as vague as possible when talking about things, but I do give a specific example of an event that happens in Chapter 3, and I talk about the overall plot structure of the game without referencing specific events. Here's a cat. Hi, Danny Doyle here, and let's talk about Triangle Strategy, because I've been obsessing over this game, and I love it, and I want to talk so much sugar about it. Originally, this was actually going to be a scripted video, but I suck at reading off of scripts. I think it's just a way that my particular form of autism manifests, but I came off super monotone. I don't think it was enjoyable to listen to, so instead I've got some talking points that I'm going to go from, and apologies if it comes off a little bit less professional sounding. There's going to be uhs and ums because that's just sort of the way that I speak. But I do at least have these bullet points to prevent it from being completely scattershot. Like, I have things that I want to touch on and points that I want to make, because I think that in a myriad of ways Triangle Strategy performs better than Fire Emblem, but in particular when it comes to the writing and how its writing does characters and how its writing does choices. Because modern Fire Emblem in particular has really emphasized the idea of these games have you make a big choice and it's going to impact the plot. You know, that your choices really matter meme is a thing for a reason. It's something that these games, in particular Fates and Three Houses, have really built themselves on, where there's a couple of routes you can go, and depending on who you choose or what nation or whatever, the story's going to play out differently. And Triangle Strategy does something similar to that. It does actually have multiple endings. Technically 4, there is a golden ending, but I don't think you're going to encounter that in your first playthrough. So for the purposes of your first playthrough, there are functionally 3 endings that you can get, and each of them involves choosing to side with one of the 3 main characters in your party, or one of 3 main characters in your party. There are 7 main characters in addition to your player avatar, and 3 of them end up at a point where their ideals are in conflict and you have to choose who you're going to side with. And this involves also making an enemy out of at least one of the other ones, which on a superficial level sounds very similar to Claude Dimitri Edelgard. You know, if you side with Edelgard, Dimitri will never forgive you. If you side with Dimitri, then you have to kill Edelgard, that sort of thing. But the way that Triangle Strategy differs is that in Three Houses, you get one chapter where you fight brigands alongside all 3 of them, and then a couple of sentences from each of the house leaders to sort of give you vaguely what their personality is supposed to be, and then you're asked to choose which one of these people do you want to side with. And it really just feels like picking a starter Pokemon. Like, I didn't have any investment in these characters. I didn't watch the pre-release stuff, and I know that there's some more information that you would have gotten if you watched it, but I don't think that that is a point in Three Houses' favor, because I feel like it's supplemental material, and supplemental material shouldn't be required to get the full experience of a video game. So, yeah, it felt like a meaningless choice, and the fact that you have to make it so early before you have any information just highlighted the fact that it's like, it is just choose based on the design. Like, do you think Dimitri looks cooler, or do you think Edelgard looks cooler? Would you rather have a Squirtle or a Charmander? That sort of deal. Triangle Strategy differs from this by pushing the choice to the very end, which is a very, very small change and makes a huge difference. And honestly, Three Houses could have just pushed the choice to the end of Part 1, because the story stays the same until then. but I feel like that would have been a huge improvement. Because rather than having spent just an hour getting to know these people, an hour at most if you're being generous, if you like really ran around the monastery and took your time on the prologue map and everything, by the time I had to choose between the 3 conflicting protagonists in Triangle Strategy, and I'm leaving their names out because I want to avoid spoilers, I'd spent 30 to 40 hours with each of them, sort of getting to know them, getting to know their personalities, and honestly getting to care about them, which is not something that I say lightly when it comes to video game characters. I'm not often hugely emotionally invested in them these days. But these were well-written characters that I had spent a lot of time with, getting to know and getting to, like. I actually, on my first playthrough, when it came to the point where I had to make this decision and all 3 of the characters made it clear, like, if you side with someone else, I'm not sticking with you. I'm opposed to you at that point. I had to set down my Switch and just sort of think about it for a couple of minutes. Just like, what do I want to do here? And then when I did ultimately make my decision, it felt like an emotional gut punch when the character who abandoned me. Like, obviously there was the gameplay loss of now I don't have this really strong unit, but I also felt the emotional loss of this is someone who my avatar feels like his family. This is someone who I, the player, really care about, and suddenly they can't side with me anymore because of the decisions that I made. Like, it really hit home. It felt like it made the choice actually matter instead of, choices really matter to me. It was a meaningful choice, or at least felt like one. And, I mean, obviously you could just be like, well, I don't care about the characters, I don't really get invested, and, that's fine. But Triangle Strategy does a really good job of trying to get you hooked on the characters. Because, I mean, there are the core 8 who you get to know that are really well fleshed out, and gameplay-wise, you are encouraged to actually learn about their personalities, whether you like them or not, whether their first impressions actually, endear them to you or turn you off of them. Because of the way that it does the choice system. You see, instead of just, selecting a dialogue option of, do you want to... So, an early example of a choice is you have to choose between which of 2 diplomatic nations, or which of 2 neighboring nations you're going to go on a diplomatic trip to. And rather than just being told, okay, either I'm going to go to Hyzant or I'm going to go to Aesfrost, you hold a vote, and the other 7 main characters each get a vote. You don't. Your player avatar, Serenoa, does not get to vote, but he does get to talk to all of the other characters and try to convince them to make the decision that you want. And in order to do this, there is an invisible stat check, but there is, more importantly, and more obviously, because it's not invisible, a series of dialogue choices where you try to say the thing that will appeal to them the most. As the game goes on, it gets harder and harder to reach the invisible stat benchmark without making the right dialogue choices. So you are encouraged by gameplay to get to know, okay, this character really cares about doing the morally right thing, whether it's hard or not. And this character, they have some morals, but they would much rather just, protect the main cast at all costs. This character has a crush on this one, so you want to appeal to her romantic feelings around that. And all those little, intricate bits of the characters mechanically benefit you to get to know. And so because of that, you are encouraged to get invested in the characters, which makes the choice that ends up setting you against some of them even harder. It's so good. It's like a feedback loop into itself. Now, obviously, the particular way that they make decisions can be frustrating, because I definitely had a couple of occasions where the vote didn't go my way, and I ended up being forced to do some things that I really didn't want to do. But, on the flip side, it feels so good to get a unanimous vote for what you want just because I know this character, they are family, I can convince them to do what I want because of how well our relationship is. And it really makes you feel invested in their lives. And it makes the choice feel more meaningful. Yeah, that's my spiel. That's how I think Triangle Strategy improves on sort of the route splits and characterizations in general, which are areas that I think Fire Emblem, and in particular Modern Fire Emblem, really struggles. So, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. Whether it's for story reasons or gameplay reasons, there's a lot of fun to be had there. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do the YouTube stuff. Bye-bye!